Today I'm going to show you how to do a traditional granny square using 4 colors. So blue is row 1, yellow is row 2, pink is row 3, green is row 4. You can do however color combinations you want, however many rows you want, but this is kind of the traditional granny square. To do a traditional granny square, I'm going to use 4 colors. First color is going to be blue, yellow, pink, and green, and I'm going to do them in that order. So I'm just going to move these out of the way for the moment, and we're going to start with the blue. To start off, we're going to make a slip knot, or basically we're just tying a knot to make a loop for our crochet hook, and just tighten it slightly so that we have a little more tension. And now we're going to do a total of 6 chains. So the slip knot counts as our first one. So 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then we're going to do a slip stitch in our first chain. But before I do that, I'm going to put a stitch marker on here. Because we're going to make this into a circle, it's going to be a little hard to see where my center is. So if I put in a stitch marker when I close off the center, it will be easier for me to see the center point when I need to make my additional stitches. So to make a slip stitch, we're just going to put the crochet hook in that first chain, and we're just going to pull it out through all of them. And then I'm going to just tighten up on the chain a little bit here. So notice how having this stitch marker in the center here, it will make it much more easier for me to see my center, so that way it will come out nice and even. So now what I'm going to do is 3 sets of double crochet chains. So first thing we're going to do is, because we're starting off, we're going to make 3 chains, and that is going to count as our first double crochet. Then I'm going to do my first double crochet, which actually acts like the second one. So wrap the yarn around, I pull it through the first loop, wrap the yarn around, pull it through the next 2 loops, wrap the yarn around, pull it through the last 2 loops. And you'll notice I basically have kind of like 2 double crochets. We're going to do a third one. Wrap the yarn around, bring it underneath. So I have 3 loops, wrap the yarn around, pull it through the 2, wrap the yarn around, pull it through the 2. So this is my first set of double crochets to make my first petal, basically. Now we're going to chain 2 to leave a bit of a space for our next set. And now we're going to do 3 double crochets again. So wrap my yarn around, pull it through, pull it underneath, wrap the yarn around, pull it through, wrap the yarn around, pull it through the next 2. So this right here counts as my first double crochet. Wrap the yarn around, put it through the hole, wrap the yarn around and pull it up. So I have 3 loops, wrap the yarn around, pull it out, wrap the yarn around, pull it out. So now I have 2. And then we're going to do our last one for this set. Wrap the yarn around, put it through the hole, pull it out, wrap the yarn around, pull it through, wrap the yarn around, pull it through. So now I have 2 sets of 3 double crochets. We're going to chain 2. Now if it makes it a little bit easier at this point, because I have kind of the center already set, we can actually take this stitch marker out. If it gets in your way, we can just move it out of the way. Because we have this center established, it's going to be easy to work with. So once we've done our next 2 chains, we're going to do another set of 3 double crochets. So there's my first double crochet. This is my second double crochet. And my third double crochet. We're going to chain 2. And we're going to make one last set of 3 double crochets. So I have 1 set, 2 sets, 3 sets, and then we're going to do the 4th set. Wrap the yarn around, put it through the hole, and we're just going to do 3 sets of 2 double crochets. And then our third one. Alright, so we now have 4 sets of 3 double crochets. 1, 2, 3, 4. We're going to chain 2 again, and then we're going to make a slip stitch within our first set of double crochets. Just stick the hook in there, pull it through, and then we're going to leave yourself about 6 inches, snip the yarn, and then pull that all the way through. And if you want, you can go ahead and use your fingers to kind of push everything off to the side. So we have our first row done. Now before we continue on, we're going to have to weave the ends in. You can wait until the very end to weave them in, though I must admit they get in my way and I like weaving them in now. This first one here, we actually wrapped almost completely around the chain. So this tiny one here, for our first circle, I'm just going to clip. You don't have to worry about wrapping that in anymore because it went all the way around. It's nice and snug in there. Now this one here we're going to have to weave in. So I'm going to take a tapestry needle and a needle threader. And if you don't have a needle threader, you can check out, I'll link to my other video on how to use a piece of paper to thread your eye of the needle. Going to put it through, and then to weave it, if you take a look, this one here is kind of part of this 3. So I'm going to weave these guys together. So all I'm doing is kind of trying to catch the loops. I'm going to go through all 3 and I'm going to pull on my yarn and see how it kind of snugs them in together nicely. Then I'm going to turn it around just because it's easier for me to hold, and I'm going to grab this next set here and go through the opposite direction. And you don't want to pull super tight, just a little taut, and then I like to pull on it just to space it out. And then we're going to go back through that first section that we did to overlap the yarn, just so this doesn't come undone. I'm going to pull my needle off, and I'm just going to kind of move that around so it's tight but doesn't look too bad, and then we're going to clip that thread. So there we go, we have round 1 done, and now we're going to do round 2. My second row for my traditional granny square is going to be out of the yellow. So what we're going to do is look in our first section, and we want to grab one of these end corners where we had done the chain 2s. See how it makes kind of an automatic corner? We're going to put the hook through there. I'm grabbing the next yarn roughly about 5 to 6 inches in, and I'm just going to put it onto the crochet hook, and I'm going to pull it through. So basically all I did was just pull a loop through. Notice the other end is still at the back. I'm going to hold that with my thumb just so it kind of holds it in place and has a little tension, and then I'm going to chain 3. And you'll notice that sometimes that first chain is a little loose, so I can just kind of pull on the yarn a bit. Now we're going to do, again, groups of 3 double crochets. So this was basically my first double crochet counted. Even though that was chain stitching, it counts as our first double crochet. And then I'm going to do 2 more double crochets. There's 1 and 2. So I have 2 double crochets. 3 double crochets, I'm sorry. Now you'll notice I'm still in that corner section. What we're actually working on is the corner part of our granny square. So because we're doing the corner, we need to do 2 chains. And then we're going to do 3 double crochets again, but we're still going to stay in the same area. So we're going to do 3 double crochets. There's 1, 2, 3. And you'll notice it kind of makes a natural corner. Now we're going to go over to the next corner of our blue wheel, or our blue first row, and we're going to go in here. Before we do that, we're just going to make 1 chain, not 2, but 1. And then we're going to do basically repeat this in this corner. So we're going to do 3 double crochets. 1, 2, 3. Remember here we had done 2 chains, so we need to do 2 chains. and then we're going to do 3 double crochets again. So 1, 2, 3, and you'll notice how that makes a natural second corner. So next we're going to come down to our next corner, and before we do that we're going to just make 1 chain, and that kind of separates it, creates a little bit of space, which will be important when we get to our 3rd row. So we made 1 chain, we're going to come over here and do 3 double crochets. So 1, 2, 3. We're going to chain 2, and then we're going to do 3 double crochets. So 1, 2, 3, and there is our next corner. We're going to do 1 chain, and then we're going to come over here and do 3 double crochets. So 1, 2, 3. We're going to do 2 chains, and then we're going to do 3 double crochets again. So 1, 2, 3. And there's our 4th corner. So now we're going to do 1 chain, because remember that's what we did in these little spots here to separate them, and then we're going to do a slip stitch, which basically means we're coming into our first double crochet section that we made here, and you'll kind of notice, see how there's almost like a little hole right in that spot. So we're going to put our hook right in that hole, going to bring it around and just do a slip stitch through it. And before we cut, I'm just going to take a quick look just to make sure I counted okay. Looks like I did. So we're going to snip the thread and leave yourself about 6 inches, because remember we need to weave the ends in. And then go ahead and pull that all the way through. So there is our 2nd row done. Now we have those 2 the 2 yarns that we need to weave in. So to weave it in, I'm going to go ahead and grab my tapestry needle and my needle threader to put my yarn through. And to weave the ends in, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to find this top section here, and I'm going to put it through all 3. And then I'm going to go through the next row. And you need to make sure you weave the ends in, otherwise once you start using the granny square, it's going to come apart. And then we're going to go through that first row originally again, so that way it looks nice and neat and you can't even tell. I'm going to clip the thread. See, you can't even tell we did anything there, but it will keep the yarn nice and tight. And then we're going to do the same thing on this side. I'm going to put it through so I can do it from the front. And all I'm going to do is just weave it through. Pull. You want to pull tight, but not super tight. Sometimes if you pull it too tight, I'll loosen it up again. And this time I'm going to go through this bottom section. I'm going to pull, and then we're going to go through here again. Alright, and our 2nd row is done. For my 3rd row, for my granny square, I'm using the pink, and we're basically going to duplicate the same thing. Now, one of the things to keep in mind when you're working with the rows is you want to make sure you add the next row onto the right side. I forgot to mention that earlier for you. And the right side is basically kind of what I would call the pretty side. If you look on the wrong side, you see a lot more of your loops like this. It doesn't look as pretty, it kind of sticks out more, whereas on the front it's kind of more flat. So we're going to start again always in our corners. We always start there. So I'm going to put the hook through. I'm going to start roughly about 5 to 6 inches in, and I'm just going to pull my yarn through, same thing like before. So I'm just going to go ahead right into my first set of double crochets. Remember, we have to chain 3 first. If that first chain's a little loose, just pull back on this to tighten it up. We're going to go ahead and do 2 more double crochets. So there's our first set. Remember, we need to do 2 chains because we're doing a corner, and then we're going to do 3 double crochets again. So there is our first corner. So now we're going to chain 1. Now this time around, see how there's a little space right here? We're actually going to go into this space with the pink. And we're going to do 3 double crochets. So 1, 2, 3. We're going to chain 1, and then we're going to go into the corner. And we're going to, again, everything is done in 3 sets of double crochets. 2, 3. We're going to chain 2 because we're doing a corner, and then we're going to do 3 sets of double crochets in that same corner. So there's our first one, 2, 3. We're going to chain 1, and we're going to go into this spot right above the blue where the yellow has a little bit of a space. And we're going to do 3 double crochets. So 1, 2, 3. We're going to chain 1, and then we're going to go into the corner. And we're going to do 3 sets of double crochets. So 1, 2, 3. Because we're in a corner, we're going to chain 2. Then we're going to do 3 double crochets. So 1, 2, 3. We're going to chain 1, and then we're going to come into this spot above the blue again between the yellow. And we're going to do 3 sets of double crochets. So 1, 2, 3. Going to chain 1, and then we're going to come into this corner. And we're going to do 3 sets of double crochets. So 1, 2, 3. Because we're at a corner, we're chaining 2. We're going to do 3 double crochets. That's 1, 2, 3. We're going to chain 1, and then we're going to go into this spot here, and we're going to do 3 double crochets. So 1, 2, 3, chain 1, and then we're going to do a slip stitch in that first section. Remember, we're kind of shooting for that little hole right there. And we're just going to do a slip stitch. And before I cut my yarn, just take a quick look, make sure I counted everything okay. Cut the yarn, pull that through, and there is our third row. I'll let you weave the ends in. My fourth row is going to be my green. So again, we're going to start in one of the corners, insert the hook through, bring a loop through, and we're going to do 3 chains. So 1, 2, 3. And then we're going to do 2 double crochets to create our first set. So there's 1, 2. So basically I have 3 double crochets. Because we're in a corner, we need to chain 2, and then we're going to do another set of 3 double crochets in the same spot. So 1, 2, 3. So there is our first corner for the green. We're going to chain 1, and then we're going to come into this section here and we're going to do 3 double crochets. So 1, 2, 3, chain 1, and then we're going to come into this section and we're going to do 3 double crochets. 1, 2, 3. We're going to chain 1, and then we're going to come into the corner and we're going to do 3 double crochets. 1, 2, 3. Now because we're in a corner, we need to do 2 chains, and we're going to go back into the same spot and do 3 double crochets. So 1, 2, 3. So our first side is done. We're going to chain 1, and then we're going to come into this spot and we're going to do 3 double crochets. So 1, 2, 3, chain 1, and then we're going to go into this spot and we're going to do 3 double crochets. 1, 2, 3, chain 1, and then we're going to go into the corner and we're going to do 3 double crochets. So 1, 2, 3. Because we're in a corner, we need to chain 2. 1, 2, and we're going to do 3 double crochets in that same spot. 1, 2, 3. We're going to chain 1, and then we're going to come in here and do 3 double crochets. 1, 2, 3, chain 1, and then we're going to come into here and do 3 double crochets. 1, 2, 3, chain 1, and come into the corner and do 3 double crochets. 1, 2, 3. Because we're in a corner, we need to chain 2. We're going to do 3 double crochets in that same spot. 1, 2, 3. Chain 1, and then we're going to come over here. 1, 2, 3. Chain 1. We're going to come into the next spot and do 3 double crochets. 1, 2, 3, chain 1, and then we're going to do a slip stitch in this section here to join the ends. So kind of pull on it a little bit so you can find that stitch. You put the crochet hook through and do a slip stitch. And then before we cut, we just want to take a quick look, make sure we are in sets of 3s. Sometimes you might miscount, you might get 2, you might get 4, so make sure it's okay now before we cut. Looks good, so we're going to cut, and then we're just going to pull that through, give it a little bit of a tug. Alright, so basically just weave in the ends, and you're done. There's your first granny square.